Let's get started, Shayon.
All right, perfect. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. I'm here to basically walk you through the different internship sort of processes that, like, basically techniques you can use to secure internships in a more, basically, I would say it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be a few simple steps that you can follow, and um, I would say secure internships. And this technique has worked for me and a few of my friends as well. So hopefully you get something out of this session. That's the first thing. The second thing that I wanted to say is I'm going to divide this session up into two bits. The first part is going to be me walking you through these steps, and majority of it, I want it to be an interactive session so that I can work through the questions that you've got, and hopefully I can answer them. So step one is going to be the things that I did that kind of helped me. And then I sort of inform my friends to do it as well. So I'm going to get started with that. Prior to that, I guess I would request, if possible, as many of you, if it's only feasible for you, if you can switch on your camera, that would be nice. That way I can see your faces and I'll feel like I'm talking to basically some of you. I can basically put faces to your names. That'll be nice. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Hunar, and thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Nikith. Thank you so much. Okay, now I'll get started. So there are three main things that I think you will need to secure internships. The first one is GitHub, GitHub, and GitHub. So I'm sure you've heard this before, but if you're doing projects, try and have the projects committed to your GitHub repository, right? That way you have projects out there, and recruiters specifically. So I'll get to that a little later, actually. So just have your projects in a GitHub repository, which is yours, and have that link ready always. Number two, which is a little bit more far-fetched. I'm not sure if you've heard this a lot, but have a website, right? It need not be very, very functional. It is fundamental. Basic website, you can just get a free domain. You can get github.io domains. If you want to spend a little bit, you can obviously host it in one of these websites like GoDaddy or Squarespace, etc. You can choose. There are many options out there. But the reason it's important is these tech companies where you're going to apply, though the market, I would say, is much hotter than it was 1 year back because of the pandemic. 1 year back, things were very slow, but right now it's pretty warm. But at the same time, the number of applicants are very, very big, right? For one position, there are like 500, 600. And the ratio in big tech, which is like, I would classify them as Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, these 5 companies. Sometimes the stats go as high as 1,500 applicants for one position. So you have to find a way to differentiate yourself. And for that reason, I would suggest having a website is amazing. Not only is the website a one-stop shop for all your projects, right? At the same time, the website is going to also show the recruiter. Again, I'll talk about the recruiters a little later, but it'll show them that you're different, right? Your website is going to showcase your work. You're a computer science engineer, so try and get fancy with it, right? A little bit of HTML, CSS is basic, but it would be really nice if you can delve into that, because if you want to get full stack developer job, something like a little bit of React or a little bit of Vue.js. It's go in and learn, have a growth mindset, and just maybe 1 week put into it, and I'm sure you're going to get a wonderful website out of it. I know it's difficult with all the courses and assignments, but if you can do that, it's just going to make your profile that much better. So again, recapping, number one, GitHub. Number two, the website, right? And number three, which is extremely crucial, is LinkedIn, LinkedIn, and LinkedIn. Be very active on LinkedIn, because now not only the tech companies, but every other company is embracing LinkedIn. So if you want to, I'm going to talk to you guys about that. But let's say some of you have passion for finance and you want to get into these fintech companies right now, be it Stripe, be it Visa, be it whichever, right? So all the recruiters of these companies are very active and scavenging through LinkedIn and scouring through all the different profiles. So make sure you have a good LinkedIn profile, and I will talk about a technique that you will use through LinkedIn. But step one is to have a good LinkedIn profile, right? Very important, have a good, decent profile picture, nothing too casual. I have seen my, so I had the pleasure of teaching at CU Boulder to some of my students, and I've had to tell some of my students, hey, it's great that you had a lovely night last Friday with, you played a little bit of beer pong, that's great. But do not have that on LinkedIn. Do not have that on LinkedIn, all right? Have very serious photographs. You can smile, obviously, be casual, that's fine, but dress a little formally. It's as simple as your first introduction, right? I'm going to put it a little casually, but it's like your first date with a company. So think of it that way. That's the first impression. So yeah, the three things. I'm going to try and recap a little bit. And so if somebody is joining a little later on, it'll probably be helpful for you. But if it gets too repetitive, just let me know. So number one is your GitHub profile. Number two is your website. Number three is your LinkedIn. Now, once you have these three ready, you can start working on different things. First is in CU, we have a beautiful portal called Handshake. Get a profile there as well and get your resume ready and float it up there. Okay. And I'll delve into every single thing through the questions that I get, but I'm just trying to give a high level overview. Next thing is also create a resume, and in the resume, write projects, right? 2-3 solid projects that you've done. And this is where your website comes in handy. Give the link to your website. In your website, let's say you have your name, profile, I do so-and-so, and 4 or 5 project pages. Just give www.johndoe.com/project1, right? And that is going to be an instant hit, right? When you later on reach out to recruiters, which I'll get to, that is going to set you apart. So yeah, have a resume, but have all the project links. Also, sorry, I missed out on LinkedIn. When you write projects, give the project link, right? And in the project link, what you can have is a small abstract of your project. But what is a lot more attractive is if you can have a video demo, right? Post it on YouTube, Dropbox, wherever, and give a small video demo. So like I said, it's not going to be easy, the steps I will lay out for you, but I promise you, if you follow these, you're going to get callbacks from these companies. I promise you that. So yeah, showcase your project demos if you have project posters, because we have a lot of these expos at CU, which are wonderful. And if you've prepared posters for them, display them in your website and just give the link of that on your resume and your LinkedIn. So these are the steps that I just laid out, right? To create a package. That is, I'm saying many steps, step one, step two. And again, I'm going to put this, package this all up into the first step to getting calls. Now, the next step, you've got a good product, but you are the product now, and you have packaged it well. You've got the fundamentals ready. How do you reach out now? You've got to market yourself, right? It's important to have a good product, but you've got to learn to market the product. That's where step two comes in. Now, step two is where you, as an individual, make a mark and get basically entered into the database of these companies. And that is not very easy. So that is why step one is fundamental and crucial. The moment a recruiter sees your profile, they should feel, this person is different. Maybe I should try and talk to this person, right? So that's why the first step is crucial, the fundamentals. Now, step two is where you gain an entry into these companies. Remember, when you're trying to apply for internships, not only are you applying for internships, but right when internships are usually start somewhere between May and June and end somewhere between August to September. And dates vary, but that's usually the time, the main internship between the two, the year gap, basically. However, what is crucial is when you're actually applying for the internships, these companies are very, very smart as well. They need talent just as much as you need the companies. So they start looking for full-time employees, right? So when you're preparing, you're putting in so much effort, not only are you doing that for your internship, but you're doing that for your full-time role as well. So just keep this in mind. So now coming to step two, where you start marketing yourself, make a list, right, of maybe 5 to 10 dream companies, 5 to 10 companies that you'd be happy to work with, because it's important to have options. And the next part is where your job begins. So let's say company A, right? Go to LinkedIn and write company A, technical recruiter, and search for them. Maybe they're not hiring right now. It does not matter, right? And what you do is there's something called InMail in LinkedIn that costs money, right? And as students, we all know we want to be as well optimized with finances as we can, right? And the budget ranges from person to person, but I'll give you a tip using which you don't really have to spend money in InMail, not at all. If you want to, go ahead and do it. InMails are great, but here's the tip. LinkedIn has a beautiful feature called send request with a note, right? Connection request with a note. What you want to do is use that feature. Now that feature has just, I think, 100 characters. I'm not sure about the number of characters, but it's limited, 100 to 140 characters. I don't remember the exact number, but what you want to do is craft a beautiful introduction. Hi, XYZ, right? So that name, some of my friends, I remember, made this mistake. They copied the recruiter, typed the recruiter name incorrectly. You don't want to do that. The name has to be correct. That's a red flag, right? So recruiter name, you'll change that, but create a small paragraph to introduce yourself. Hi, XYZ recruiter, right? Not recruiter, but just the name XYZ, comma. I am so-and-so. I love or I like doing XYZ. That is my passion. And I think your company, ABC, is a great company because of, again, XYZ. I'd love to get a chance to learn more about this company. Do not come across as somebody who is looking for a job, but more as somebody who really would like to learn, right? Embrace the growth mindset for this company. And cap it off with, would love to connect with you, and sign off with your name. So in 100 characters, you basically bypass LinkedIn's InMail system, and you just send a request with your name and with your details and introduce yourself to the recruiter. Now, while this is a technique that you have to use, don't expect immediate results. But the recruiters are very, very busy sometimes. So send this out in batches, right? Take 1 hour, 60 minutes time, and send it out to, let's say, 100 recruiters and of company A, and expect the conversion rate to be 2 to 3 replies every 100 connection requests you send, right? So start with this technique. It's very important to understand you are a fresh product, right? And this is the marketing phase that you're going through, right? So be humble, have a growth mindset, and start off with this process. Day 1, company A, day 2, company B, and rinse and repeat. Now, the result of this is very important. So what I saw was, initially, when you start off, you don't see a lot of results, but the effort that you put through, it keeps on stacking, right? And that stacking has a wonderful result. By day 50 or day 30, depending on luck factor is there as well, right? Let's face it. So depending on your luck, you're going to start seeing a lot of these replies coming in. Hey, so-and-so, thank you for connecting with me. I have an opening in this company for this position. Would you be interested in learning more about it? And you say, sure. And this is how you get started. So this is the second part, the marketing phase. And finally, the most fun phase is step 3. When you start hearing back from these companies, I gave you a little bit intro of that. So that is when your interview loops start. Now for interviews, I can have more discussion about this. It really depends on what kind of a position you're interviewing for. Now, LeetCode is a good resource, but having fundamental knowledge of data structures, algorithms is very important at this phase. Where most of these companies will hire you at level, basically, it depends, a level, like in Google, it's called L3, in Microsoft, it's 5960, in Amazon, it's I think E3, Facebook is E3 or E4, I cannot remember at the top of my head. And Apple, I think it's called ICT 3 or 4. Anyway, it's basically these beginning positions, right? Opening, it starts off with that. And so these companies will start calling you. And this is the last tip that I'm going to share, which is basically these companies are expecting to see results from the candidates that they're interviewing for. And so the way you do that is usually these interviews are structured in a layered manner. You have something like an opening layer where the recruiter says, hey, I like your profile. You know what? I would like to give you an opportunity. Why don't you just solve an online coding exercise? If you do that, you qualify for a phone interview. Or sometimes they just take you to the phone interview directly, followed by an online coding exercise. You know, it really depends on the loops that you're going through. There's no cut and dry method for this. But the final step is basically the on-site round. Unfortunately, given the circumstances we are in right now, on-site rounds will also be virtual, right? But that is the main round, right? So I'm going to go step by step. First is the phone round. You want to be as confident as you can without sounding arrogant, and think out loud in these loops, right? That's the only tip I can give you, because understand, it's everybody's learning this new times that we are in. We are learning through this. So I have had the pleasure of sort of witnessing things from the other side and looking at how am I interacting with a candidate, and sort of, so what I prefer is I like the candidate to think out loud, right? And so that is the first impression, think out loud. And the recruiter, I'm sorry, the interviewer will work through the problem with you if needed. That's the phone rounds that if you have that, you should always follow that technique. The next one is, I'm just trying to give you sort of highlights, and then you can ask me questions. The next one that I can think of is the online round. So online round is very important. In certain companies give you psychometric tests. Psychometric test is a bunch of 30 questions, 40 questions, where when you're answering them, be truthful. At the same time, think about it this way. If you were interviewing a fellow teammate, that's how you have to think about it. You wouldn't want somebody who would come off as arrogant and, to put it very plainly, who's a jerk, right? You don't want to work with somebody like that. Life becomes very difficult. So the psychometric test basically sort of understands what kind of a mentality do you have, and try and develop a growth mindset through the grad school, so that you come across as a person who likes to learn and who is easy to work with. The psychometric test is that. And so again, your personality will shine through, and that is totally fine. But just keep that in mind. Make sure it does not seem, the answers don't seem arrogant. And the technical round, or the coding question that's there in the online round, the one thing that I saw there, what worked for me, is data structures and algorithms. And I cannot harp on this enough. I remember in one of these companies, I had an on-site interview, and the on-site interview was, I would rank it as a lead code medium. I'm not sure if you guys have gone through it, but lead code has different varying levels, easy, medium, and hard. But I decided to give a twist. And since I have a technical audience, I'm going to get a little technical here. So you have something called linked lists in data structures, and something called hash sets. Now, the problem that I had, I could use either, but the trade-off would be, with linked list, it would be an O of n, as we all know, and with a hash set, it would be O of 1. But I tried to come up with a custom data structure, and I named it a linked hash set. And I caveated that by saying that, hey, whoever is reading this, I kind of, I cracked a joke in the comments saying, if you're reading this, I know this is quirky, but the reason I'm doing it is I will be able to reduce the time complexity and the space complexity. And I gave an explanation with the comments. Now, it's not always, I got really lucky. I would say that I got a question that I was comfortable with, but that luck sort of comes in with as much practice as you get. And if you can do that, the result of that, I remember, was the recruiter contacted me within 48 hours and told me, hey, we are skipping all your phone loops and we are calling you on-site directly. So you'll be directly going to on-site if you crack that technical round with as much, pomp and command as you can. You want to be confident, and you want to show that you have technical expertise there. So, and for like on-site rounds, what you'll have to do is you'll have, all of them usually 45 minutes, 4 to 5 interviews with a technical round. I'm giving a lot of information here, and so I'm going to stop in the next probably 2 2 minutes, and I'm going to start fielding questions. So what we want to do in the on-site round is 2 things. Behavioral questions will be there. You want to answer them in the STAR format, right? STAR is situation, task, action, result. So practice behavioral questions have, like, there are some standard questions. Tell me a technical challenge you faced and how did you work through that? Or tell me a time where you had to manage upwards. Basically, you had a team member who was more senior than you, maybe in a project where you're working with if you're in your first year master's with a second year master's student, or if you're a sophomore, you're working with a junior year student. And how did you tackle a problem there where that person was disagreeing with you? How did you get your point across? So prepare a variety. A good book to go through for behavioral questions is Cracking the Coding Interview by, I think, I'm forgetting her name. I think it's Gail McDowell. Look up Cracking the Coding Interview. It's a famous book. The problems there are good to warm up with, but LeetCode is I would say both are good resources, but LeetCode will probably give you a more real life feel and of the questions that you'll get. And the behavioral questions there is excellent. Cracking the Coding Interview. They have a format. The author is amazing. She's I think she's worked at Google, Microsoft, etc. And she has basically a wonderful sort of format that you can follow. That's usually the STAR format. So give an organized answer. That's the more important thing in behavioral. And for technical questions, it's the same that I said right before, which was make sure you think out loud, because you won't be whiteboarding now, given the current scenario. If you're flown in, that's great. I'm not sure if companies are doing that because employees themselves are not there in the offices. So you'll probably be doing it through code.io, CoderPad, or one of these different websites that are there. So what you want to do is, as you're typing through, maybe before you do that, think out loud, strategize the problem. Say, I think, you know what? I think XYZ data structure is going to be excellent for this problem because this is the way I'm thinking through the problem. And if you're making mistakes, the interviewer will be more than happy to work with you. And then try and solve it by by writing down basically workable code, right? Code that, the better word is code that will compile. So yeah, that'll be the on-site round. So I've spoken a lot and I've tried to rush through a lot of information. And I tried to give you step 1, build the fundamentals, your portfolio. Step 2, market yourself. But the fruits of step 1 and step 2 is the result, and which is your interviews. And I tried to brush through quickly how can you prepare for the interview loops. Now I'd love to field questions, and I'll basically keep an eye on the chat window itself, chat window as well, along with, it would be really awesome if you guys can just come online, unmute yourself and ask me questions. That'll be sort of easier for everyone. All right.
Okay, Khalid has raised his hand.
Go ahead.
Khalid, go for it.
Yeah, Khalid. All right. So Khalid, I'm not sure if you're having audio video issues. At any point, you know, if you start talking, I'll stop. I have a question on chat from Hunar. It says, "Here, Shayon, I don't have that much projects under my belt for now, since I have been working in the industry for 2 years and my undergrad projects were fundamental ones. Do I currently need to work on new projects for my resume apart from the projects that I'm going to do at CU?" Thanks so much for so firstly, my pleasure. I'm here to provide more information. That's a great question. I'd like to start with that, Hunar. And I think most people are in the same boat as you are, right? I came directly from undergrad to grad school, so I did not have super fancy projects as well. What you will have are maybe projects that you worked on in your undergrad, the final year project, right? So that is more than enough, right? Try and be descriptive about what did you exactly do there? What was your role? And At the same time, your assignments at CU, be it machine learning, algorithms, I'm not sure which courses are you guys taking, they have usually projects. Some of the courses have capstone projects. That is more than enough. Describe what did you do there. That's very important. And also try and showcase those projects. That is more than enough. And that is why I said create a website, which will be another avenue for you to showcase your projects. These companies are not looking for system design experts at this point. You will be sort of hired in a position where you are going to be, I won't say exactly entry level. And so I'm going to come and talk a little bit about some other experiences. I want to field some more questions, and then I'll talk about my experience at CU and also how to get into a little bit higher level, a more senior level. Rajshri mentioned that in the email, so I will touch upon that. So don't worry about it. Showcase the projects you have and create a website. That'll be a beautiful way to showcase your technical skills. So that should be more than enough. Khalid, are you ready? All right. So okay, no worries, Khalid. You frame your question and put it in the chat window. I see you started and you said you're typing from the start, if I'm understanding that correctly. So take your time, don't worry about it, don't rush yourself, write that question down and I will answer that. In the meanwhile, I see Tyler, you have your hand raised. So yeah, I'm ready for your question.
Yes, sir. Just two few questions. I asked my friend, I have a portfolio site, and I asked my friend what he thought about it. And he had one recommendation that I wanted to get your advice on. He said I had too many projects, and I know there's a lot of projects that I can definitely hide, that the API is no longer working, it's kind of outdated. But do you recommend like 3 like show and tell projects, like your best projects, or like if you have a laundry list of them? And then also I just wanted to add on to that, like is there like a top like framework to learn into, like .NET versus Java or something like that?
Right, great questions, Tyler. I'll take them one by one. The first question, and so thank you for asking this question. I cannot cover everything in the intro section, so I'm going to talk about what you just asked right now, and that will help me cover some ground that I did not cover before. So very good question. Your friend is right. We should not have too many projects. Try and select 2 to 3. Actually, there's no exact secret recipe. So 2, 3, 4, it can be any, but I can give you a guideline, and that is the 10-second rule. So when you submit your resumes, there are 2 steps that it goes through. First is there's an algorithm that these companies have, and your resume is going through a scanner, right? So if you're seeing some keywords out there in the job description, this actually touches a little bit your second question, but I'll get to the second question separately. So try and put them there. If the job description says we want somebody who's good at object-oriented programming, software engineering, et cetera, try and put those in. Create a section on top of your resume called keywords and put them there. Now coming to your projects, you want to have 2 to 3 solid projects, right? By solid, what do I mean? Something that shows, according to you, your technical skills. And what you want to do in the resume, you want to highlight certain words. Like you said, you mentioned something excellent, right? API building. If you've done that, that is excellent. Highlight that. Now, at this level, nobody wants a fully finished product, right? These companies are spending millions of dollars to create these fully finished products. High school, undergrad, and grad projects are not expected to be at that level, right? So try and put your best foot forward for 2 to 3 projects, but make your friends go through the 10-second test. It's a fun experiment. I did that all the time with my friends. Start the stopwatch and let your friends take a look at your resume, right? Just for 10 seconds. That's the cool bit. Stop the stopwatch and tell your friends, you know what? What are the things you just saw on my resume? Can you just recap that for me? And if your friend has picked up on API because you either made it in italics, underlined it, or made it in bold, right? Like the font, your friend will be able to sort of reiterate, like regurgitate that to you and say, Yeah, I saw you are good at building APIs. You are a backend developer who specializes in Java or .NET, any sort of object-oriented programming language. And you also have a knack for React. Now, I'm seeing a lot of different things here, but that is a 10-second test. Have 2 to 3 projects that passes the 10-second test. And your second question coming to .NET or Java, the different companies have different software stacks. The bigger companies out there have internal software stacks. So it's not possible for you to be ready with all the tools that you need, right? Like Google has a set of internal software elements that they use. Amazon does the same, Microsoft does the same. .NET is something that Microsoft uses. Google uses Java, right? So what you want to do is be good at the fundamentals, right? Pick one language and be good at it when you're interviewing, but don't worry too much about which language are you good at. They will train you. They will invest in training you. So don't worry too much about that. Does that answer your questions, Tyler?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. My pleasure. All right. I'm going to take the question from Khalid now. I think, Khalid, your question goes, my question would be if it's harder to get hired as a full-time software developer rather than transition from an internship to a full-time position. So if that's your question, I'm going to answer that directly. The answer is no. If you are interning for a company, it's great to get a full-time offer from them. That is great. Thumbs up. However, remember, every single offer you get, and so like I said, I cannot cover everything at the beginning. This is another tip for you guys. Every single offer you get is another leverage in your favor. What do I exactly mean by that? I'll clarify. So this is a fun part, but this comes at the end of the entire process. Let's say you have you've worked for company A and you have received an offer from company A because you interned there. That is great. That does not mean you will not be able to get offers from company B, C, and D. But if you have that offer from company A, what it does mean is when you go out and interview and get offers from B, C, and D, the end of it all, you have a fun bit where you get to negotiate with these companies. And the companies right now, given the market situation in 2021, market situation is very volatile right now. So right now, while I'm talking in September in 2021, I'm caveating that. The market situation is such that if you go out and if you tell company B, hey, thank you for the offer, but I also have an offer from company A. And I think the offer that you've given me, so usually there are 3 components to an offer. I'll just touch that briefly, which is the base pay, the stocks that are offered to you, and your sign-up bonus. I think company A has a better offer. I would like you to bump it up for me. Now, not only will companies look at comparable offers and bump it up for you, certain companies, if you tell them, and be truthful here, it's very important. Do not try to play the recruiters. They are super trained. So I'm sure none of you will do that, but I'm just suggesting because I've seen before things have fallen through the cracks because people were not truthful. So it's very important to be truthful, but being truthful, if you have interview loops with C and D, company B will bump up your offer for you to cancel your interview loops with C and D. So that does happen. So now coming back to the question directly, Khalid, no, the answer is no. If you have an internship, that's great if you can convert it, but getting full-time offers is not more difficult, right? You will, and I can give you real world hardcore examples. Facebook does give you an offer, so does Microsoft directly. However, interview for interns is as difficult as interview for full-time employees at Microsoft. Facebook, I'm not sure, but last time I checked, it was a little bit easier for interns. But it, again, depends from company to company. I'm just harping on a few companies because my friends and me, we had discussions and I know about these, but your mileage may vary. However, I know for a fact that Google does not convert intern offers into full-time offers. You have to go through another layer of interviewing after your internship to sort of get a full-time offer. So yeah, so the answer is no, it does not translate to an easier experience from intern to full-time. It's more or less the same, but the more the offers you have, the more you have higher number of bargaining chips, that's all. Okay, so I think there is another question for Khalid. Would it be harder to get hired as a full-time software developer without doing the internship if I'm already working at a smaller company? Should I continue working at my current company and get experience, or try to get one of the internships at the companies that you mentioned? That's a great question. Now, any company that you work for, what is important is the work that you're doing. If you can showcase that in your portfolio, if you can showcase that in your website, that's great, right? Having said that, these the tech companies, and I'm naming just 5, but they're 10, 15, right? You can look them up online. Usually the recruiters will let you use offers from a somewhat of a competitor level company as a bargaining chip, because that is how at the end of all these cycles you realize that the offers that you get from 10 or 15 of these companies that are out there will be different from the offer that you get from a smaller company. So while yes, any experience counts, right? Experience is what matters. But if you want to think about bargaining chips, then it's preferable to have experience, offers, etc., from one of these companies. But is that the end of the world? No. And that's why this is just my perspective. You guys have a lot of options to like listen to various other alumni out there. So pick up as much of the these information points, tidbits as you can. But that's just my perspective. All right. So I don't see any raised hands. Okay, I see a raised hand. Medha, go ahead.
Hi, Shayan. Thanks for taking this session. It's really helpful. Like you spoke about negotiation, so it's kind of a very new concept for me. I'm coming from India and just arrived. So I was wondering if you could share a detailed perspective on that and also include your own experience about how you negotiated your offer. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. So I'm going to caveat before I start, I'm going to stay away from numbers because the session is being recorded, or even if it was not being recorded, I would stay away from numbers because that might get me into trouble. So putting that out of the way. All right, but I'm going to talk about the negotiation, and I was in the same boat as you are, and that is totally okay. It's okay to feel that way, right? So here is how I dealt with it. I had offers from company A and company B. I'm going to leave that there for now. And let's say company B, even before I completed my interviews with company A, I finished, let's say, interviewing with company B. I reached out to the recruiter when the recruiter gave me the offer, and I reached out to them and said, I would love to work with your company. However, and I'm going to get to the specifics a little later on. However, I have 2 interviews scheduled with this company, and they are your direct competitor, and they're willing to offer me a lot, not a lot, but let's say higher numbers here and here, right? And like I said, there's base pay, there is the stocks, and there is the sign up bonus. And so the recruiter is going to push back saying that this is, we feel we've given you a good offer, but then you have to push back saying, I understand, but I think you can do better in, let's say, stock, because usually the base pay is fixed because of regulatory reasons. The stocks and sign-up bonus is where you can really push them. So I feel it would be better if you can push in these 2 areas, and that would just make me a more happy employee. And the recruiters don't usually sort of give, like, the recruiters will ask for hard numbers. My principle was I wouldn't give them numbers, I would just push them. And at a point where I was happy, I said, thank you. And the negotiation was successful. And I canceled a few loops. And I basically, between the 2 companies, I selected basically Microsoft at this point. So that's what I went with. Having said that, the 2 things I will say is, in certain cultural norms, we see that negotiation has a negative connotation. In the United States, that's not the case. It's about a fair deal, right? If the market condition is X and the numbers offered to you Y do not fit that, one should always go ahead and say, you know what, I think I deserve a better deal. And so that is the approach that one should take. That is what I have learned with my experience. And yeah, that comes at a lot later phase, but since you asked that question, that was my experience, right? And so the most important thing that I could tell all of you is don't give the recruiter hard numbers. Plenty of YouTube videos that sort of explain this process, but yeah, try and push the recruiter, and recruiters are experienced negotiators. So they're going to smell fishy numbers, or they're going to try and sort of corner you. You want to be smart and you want to have discussions with your friends. A very good support system that I had was I had my friends there, my batchmates, whom I could sort of talk to. And so that is a good support system. All right.
Shayon, will you be given time for negotiation, or do you have to negotiate on the spot?
That's a great question, Nikhil. So for full-time position, for internships, these don't really stand, but you have a standard amount usually. Maybe you can just negotiate on your relocation package, but not sure if that is given right now given the COVID situation. However, with offers, so there are two things that are there. First is you have a negotiation period. They're going to tell you 14 days, 21 days, depending on the company and the recruiter. The recruiter will try to push you and make you close on it as soon as you can. So all these things are different steps, and I'm trying to put them as simply as I can, but you have to really think through your way of doing things. So you have to start the interview loops at the same time to ensure you sort of end within 14 days of one another. So you will have 14 days, but sometimes you can say, you know what, I have this loop with another company. I'm in the final stages with this. If you give me a better number, I'm going to cancel this. Otherwise, I will have to go through with this as well. That is one. But one thing I would say on principle is if you accept an offer, please do not renege, which means once you accept the offer, stick to your word, right? Because that is a question of integrity, number one. And number two, that's a question of the school. CU Boulder will get blacklisted if students of CU Boulder does that. We do not want to do that, which means next year, somebody in the same boat as you are will not simply get a call from this company or this recruiter and will miss out on an opportunity because the recruiter had a SAR experience with a student of the school. So on principle, please do not renege. If you feel you need more time to negotiate, be honest and open. Integrity is very, very important. So that is my 2 cents about this question, Nikhil.
Thank you. Thank you, Shayon.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Yeah, I see a raised hand. You can go ahead.
Hi, Shayon. This is Maitli. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, totally. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I have a question. So during the coding interviews, so most of the times, how it will be, will they ask direct questions like probably BFS or something, or do they ask puzzle related questions? So we have to understand the puzzle and we need to figure out what is the algorithm we have to use, probably BFS. So those kind of questions will be more, or will they be giving direct ones?
That's a great question. I just want to clarify, am I getting your name correctly? Is it Nagi? Is that how I should pronounce?
My name is Maitli. My first name I gave it.
Maitli, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you for asking that question. So to answer your question, the questions are not exactly puzzles. So the reason I want to avoid using the word puzzle is because there's a negative connotation associated with it. 10 years back, there are plenty of articles on the internet saying, questions like, why is, the covers on the road, the manholes round, is an important question. Nothing like that is asked. So it's not a puzzle. It's not exactly a puzzle, but you will be asked an application related question, right? Like for instance, let's say something like you will not have BFS directly, but let's say you will have a maze related question. There'll be a maze given to you and there'll be an opening at the end of the maze, which is the location you have to find. And the person starting the maze is at the bottom left corner, right? And so the end is at the bottom, top right corner. So how would you traverse that matrix? I'm just giving an example at this point. So questions like that will come. Now, given if it's a 2D matrix, how would you go for it? Would you take a BFS approach or a DFS approach? And if so, why? That is the kind of question you can expect. Will it straight away say, hey, use breadth first search? No, they won't do that. They will give you application-based questions. Will it be like a head-scratching puzzle? Like I've read articles that really scared me that said, hey, if there is a bet of, let's say, $100, and I will choose a number between 1 and 100, and you have to guess that number. Now, should you accept the bet or not? These are the kind of puzzle-related questions that float around the internet. Nothing like this is asked in the interviews. The question that I just said is basically a binary search, but that's not asked, because if you just calculate by the logarithmic value, you'll realize one should not take that bet. So, but anyway, these puzzles are not asked, but application-based questions will be asked. Does that clarify the question? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got your point. So, I mean, I was just thinking about this kind of chessboard problems, queen, these kind of problems. So, I mean, when I said puzzle, I meant these kind of problems. So, are these also application-based questions where these involve matrix?
Yes, those can be asked. You might get a question like that, but if it's a very difficult question, remember, don't get a cold feet while answering them. Every other applicant candidate is taking longer to answer that question. Certain questions can be solved in 30 minutes. Certain question needs 40 minutes. If you're taking that, that's fine. They're going to sort of have a comparable scale. How did the other candidates perform? The questions you're stating, I'm not sure exactly the problem that you're stating, but it seems like you're going towards a more difficult application-based question. So those answers, those questions might be asked, but it's completely fine if you take a little bit longer to solve them.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hey, Shayon, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can totally hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thanks. I think my mic wasn't working for some reason. I had a second question. So should I improve my skills in both front end and back end? Like, do hiring managers prefer someone who's like good at both of them, or should I just try and like only focus on front end or only back end if I want to like become like a full stack? Eventually, I want to become a full stack, but for like the first job, should I try and like be good at one thing only?
That's a great question, Khalid. So I'm going to try and also answer this in I'm going to open this question up a little bit more to sort of cater to the wider audience. So the answer to your question, there's no direct answer, right? No cut and dry answer. So some of the companies, specifically the smaller companies, will actually ask you to basically apply for these fine-grained position. Hey, we are looking for a front-end developer who specializes in React or Vue.js, right? Yeah. However, the medium to, the larger companies know that your skills are not fixed, right? You can always learn and pick up skills. So these companies will not really focus on your front-end skills, to be honest, or your back-end skills. They will just see your fundamentals are solid. Like, for instance, if you're applying for a software engineering position, they will not ask you about, let's say, how should I state this? Like basically properties of a front-end element in React. They will not go for props, right? Okay. What they might ask you is, do you understand what locks and semaphores are? Or like from an operating system-based question. Or if you say you are really good at compiler design, how would you, maybe a simple question that surrounds compiler design, right? But they will, again, I will stress on data structures and algorithms from the medium to larger companies. They will focus on your fundamental computer science concepts. So if you want to apply for a position that is more niche, usually straight out of college, that those are mainly industry hires go for them in the larger companies when they're looking for industry hires, and in smaller companies where they need a specific skill set for a job. However, when you're applying for you'll see most of these job openings have university recruitment written on it. So university recruitment is more open-ended. They want you to have a growth mindset. They want you to learn or be able to learn. That is the most important thing they're looking for. And fundamental concepts should be clear, and you should be able to communicate clearly. Does that answer your question, Khalid?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I need to like improve my skills in like a lot of things basically, if I want to get hired. Okay.
We all feel that way. We all feel that way. Don't worry. You
Right.
just take it one step at a time and you'll get there.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
My pleasure. Yes, so I'm going to right now touch on a quick point that I did not touch on. So I'm going to come to the questions again. Just give me 2 minutes, I'll talk about that. And so in CU Boulder, I really benefited a lot because Rachi has nailed that in the chat. I was a student assistant in the first semester, course assistant for artificial intelligence. In the second semester, I was a TA for data structures for Rhonda. And what really, I really connected with, I learned so much from my students, and I was really humbled to get an instructor position for my second year. And I was teaching data structures to my students. And I cannot stress on the fact that, how much that course taught me more than it taught my students. I learned so much from my students. What I'm doing over here with all of you, I did that in a gallery filled with almost 200 students. I think Rachi knows the number. They had 193 plus students, and other students would just come into my gallery, and I had the pleasure of teaching them. I would run around the entire gallery and talk to them. And so things I'm talking to you about, I spoke to my students about the same, and many of them cracked these interviews, and I learned from their experiences. So yeah, I mean, if you have TA, opportunities, make the most of that. You learn from it as much as your students do. And also for your job interviews, remember, many of us have maybe come after 1 or 2 years of experience, or we are straight away from undergrad, right? And in that case, we really don't have a lot of experience, but your TA experience, your RA experience, whatever you've got under your belt counts. You can talk about a time when you had a difficult problem, with a student. The student was not understanding an assignment and how you worked through it with the student. If you can say that, right, that also is a huge bonus, because we all feel like we don't have enough experience, but we forget that all the applicants right now in the same pool are in a very similar boat as you are. So while I know it feels like, you are under a lot of pressure to perform and things are difficult, but remember, on a comparative basis, that's what matters. You are in the same boat as many, many others. So do small things to just differentiate yourself. And I'm sure you're going to see wonderful results from that. Okay, I'll get back to answering questions. I see 3 hands raised. Just unmute yourself and shoot questions at me.
Yeah. So, hey, Shayon, thanks for taking this session. I had a question that, like, while applying for internships, if those companies are dream companies, should you wait for it, or like should you apply to as many as you can, like within a month or so?
So for internships, I would say apply to as many companies as you can, and try and land internships, right? So I know it's so let me frame this a little in a better way. Internships are more time bound than your full-time positions, right? And you need to land an internship to have some sort of experience under your belt. While you're interviewing for different companies, if, again, like I said, if you've accepted an offer, please do not renege. But once you have received a couple of offers, try and extend that acceptance period, right? So you can talk to the recruiter and extend that period and maybe complete the other loops. But sometimes what happens is, if you're straight out of undergrad, or if you don't have experience in the United States, you are at a slight disadvantage compared to some other applicants. Now that gets bridged very quickly once you do your internship, right? So do not wait for anything in the internship process. From my experience, it's a game of speed and time. Follow the processes I said, and that will help you land a job at the end of the 2 years. But internships, try and apply for and interview as much as you can and gain experience. But if you have something at hand, for internships, I would say 1 in hand is better than 2 in the bush, right? So try and have an internship first, and I would sort of focus and optimize for the time for internships, because it's a shorter time. You don't have a lot of time to prepare. So yeah, if you have an internship at hand, accept it, go for it, gain some experience, and continue practicing your interviewing chops. And I'm sure you're going to see the results in your full time.
All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Kunal. Right.
This is Sana.
Hi.
I'm sorry. I think someone else was speaking, but yeah, I just have a small question. It's regarding this cold emailing, right? So I just want to understand. You were telling us earlier that you're supposed to send out mails to recruiters, and not mails necessarily, but reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn or something like that, and tell them that you're interested in so and so work that they're doing, and this is your passion and stuff like that. So honestly speaking, what if you are just looking for a software engineer role without any kind of specialization or something that you're actually basically if you don't just want to boil down to one field of one area that you want to show your passion at? What if you're just applying for normal software engineer roles or normal software developer roles? How would you take that with the recruiter?
Sure, that's a great question, Sana. So again, I'm going to open it up a little bit more. So step by step, first is LinkedIn. I requested you to sort of use a send connection and tailor your message in that. Now, drilling into the message, you're absolutely right. Going from university, it's not possible to say, I want XYZ role. So I'm going to elaborate on that a little. I'm sorry, I was not probably clear. Try and talk about the company there. You don't have a lot of characters to talk about a specific section of the company. So let's say you're applying to, let's say hypothetically, Stripe, which is a very fast and strong fintech company. It's up and coming. So let's say you're applying or connecting with a recruiter from Stripe, and you basically don't talk about a specific role, but more like what Stripe does. Hi, so-and-so. I really like Stripe as a company for XYZ, for how they're changing the fintech landscape, right? Different companies need to study up about the profile and just write that in 2 lines and just write why you will be a great fit because you think your software engineering skills would be a great fit there. Or maybe you just write you're really interested in it and you're a student right now who would be willing to apply for that company. Now, when you send so many LinkedIn requests to, like I said, the conversion rate might be 3 recruiters will respond to you out of every 100 recruiters that are out there. And you're right, does cold emailing or cold, in this case, connection sending on LinkedIn always work? The answer is not really. However, for every 100 recruiters that you reach out to, there are 3 recruiters who are as frantically looking for a software engineer as you're looking for a job. And that is the click that you have to find for so many companies that you're looking for, right? Does that answer your question, Sana?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Hey, Shayon, I had another quick question.
Yeah, sure.
So right now I'm working with a little bit of AWS cloud and like DevOps stuff, but I don't have like any certifications. Do you think like I should like try and get the certifications? Would that like boost my resume, or are those like, is it like actually necessary for me to like land a position?
That's a great question. So the thing is, most of these companies, this might sound quirky, I'm sorry if it does, but AWS is what Amazon uses. If you, let's say, get into Google, they'll be using GCP. If you get into Microsoft, they'll be using Azure, and so on and so forth, right? So having a specific certification is great when you're in the industry, but when you're going for university roles, try and work, even if you worked with Heroku for that matter, right? Or Google Cloud App, or any of these app engines that are there. It's totally fine. You know how the cloud system works. Once you're in, you can have, bolster your resume with more of these certifications. But like I said, if you're looking for a very specific role in a specific company that needs AWS certification, then sure, go ahead and get that certification. But for these broader roles, is it a requirement? Absolutely no. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
All right. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to, we are almost out of, I think we're out of time. I'm not sure, but I'm going to take a quick question from the chat. I think Abhishek had a question. It says, how do some of these things differ for students looking for, specialized roles, such as machine learning engineer, etc.? That's a great question, Abhishek. You will see when you're applying for these roles in these companies, in the career portal, you're going to see software engineering roles, machine learning roles, etc. So when you apply for a machine learning role, what will happen is you will be basically falling into the category of data scientist, machine learning engineer, etc. The entry level roles will ask you questions again. Depends. This actually depends from company to company. Some companies will straight away test you on your data structures and algorithms in most of the interviews, but a couple of loops will actually test you on your knowledge of machine learning. Maybe they'll tell you, okay, do you know what support vector machines do? How does that work? Or maybe they're going to get into deep learning, right? And ask you, can you explain how backpropagation works in a neural network, right? So maybe they'll get into a little bit of that. However, will they ask you to solve computer vision problem that 15 engineers are working on at one of these companies? No, they won't do that. They will give you simpler problems to solve, but still they will drill down on your fundamentals. So, but again, this differs a lot from company to company because this is an up and coming sort of field. Certain companies test you on your fundamentals and certain companies will just sort of drill you. I know for a fact, NVIDIA will drill you on both. And then again, I you know what, I won't get into the specifics because this keeps on changing, but be prepared with both. If you want to get into machine learning machine learning position, okay, now that I have a different sort of perspective now, I just thought through it while I was talking, do something, ask your recruiter this, because these positions, machine learning or applied science positions, can actually have different kind of interviews. So reach out to your recruiter and ask, hey, do I expect direct questions or do I expect like, you know, just machine learning or data structures, etc. All right, I rambled a little bit on the last one. Sorry for that. Okay, I think we are out of time.
Hey, Shayon, I just have one last question. This is Sana again.
Sure.
Sorry, but I just want to understand, like, especially if you have work experience before coming to master's, and if it's like more than 3 years, you tend to have a longer resume, right? And I was just wondering about the 10-second rule that you just said. What do you recommend here? Because I think on my resume, I have around 4 to 5 projects, most of which are from my work, and very few of them are from my undergrad. And my resume doesn't necessarily last 1 page. So I'm not really sure if it's required for me to still go down and bring it down to a page, or what do you recommend here?
That's a great question. So whether it's 1 page or 2 pages, your resume should pass the 10-second test. No matter how many pages it is, I mentioned this at the beginning, make sure you ask a friend to sort of go through your resume, time your friend for 10 seconds and see what has the friend assimilated from your resume. When a recruiter is going through 1,000 resumes a day, they will just give you 10 seconds, that's it. And if you jump out in those 10 seconds, if your friend can basically tell you exactly what you want to hear or how you want the recruiter to perceive you in just those 10 seconds, then you're good. Otherwise, you need to work on shortening your resume, but more importantly, I would say using tools like, you know, different fonts, using bold fonts, etc. Play around with the font sizing to ensure the recruiter can see what you want them to see. That's number one. Number two is whether you have a lot of experience or whether, you know, you're a university student. When you're applying for a university recruitment position, the number one thing that most of these companies look for is your ability to learn. As long as you can portray that, you're fine, you're golden, right?
All right. Because generally what happens is if you're working on industry specific projects, you tend to write a little bit more, give a little bit more insight on what you did, because it will not be so self-explanatory, right? So you tend to do that, which is why I think my resume has gone over a page. But yeah, I just wanted to get that understanding there.
Yeah, you know, the recruiter need not get the context of the project. Try and write why or what did you exactly do in the project and what are your skills that you learned from that. That is the most important part for you to get across to the recruiter. Does that help you narrowing down the project?
Shayon, I have a quick question. So going to career services and having them kind of review your resume and kind of like give it a US perspective on what you already have, does that help? I mean, if it does, then students should go, right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Students should make the most of the career services out there at CU. They're excellent. Actually, for me, Microsoft did come on campus and I had the pleasure of interviewing with Microsoft on campus, but the techniques that I just mentioned, that helped the recruiter select my resume, and they selected many of my friends' resume as well, right? And so that'll help you get selected. But totally, go to career services, make the most of amazing career services that CU has, and get your resume sort of checked once. That will be,
yeah.
or more than once. That's super helpful. Thank you, Rachi, for pointing that out.
Yep. Okay, I gotta hop out of this meeting. So good luck, everybody, and thanks, Shayon, one more time for doing this.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.